The year is 1983. The place? Basingstoke Canal in Aldershot, Hampshire, England. The witness was fishing in the early hours of the morning. At this time, the witness was approached by two small humanoid figures with helmets on. The humanoids and witness walked around the bend to a waiting 45-foot diameter craft which was sitting on the towpath. The witness entered the craft and after a short while was told he could leave. After the witness left the craft, it flew away at a high rate of speed. On August 12, 1983, at about 00:15 hours, the witness, Alfred Bertu, went fishing at Basingstoke Canal in Aldershot, Hampshire. At about 01 hours, the witness experienced a very unusual event. The witness stated,
"I saw a vivid light coming toward me from the south, which is over North Town. It wavered over the railway line and then came on again, then settled down. The vivid light went out, though I could still see a light through the boughs of the trees. I thought, well, that can't be an airplane, it's too low because it was at about 300 feet. During this time I had set the cup down on the tackle box and lit a cigarette. And while smoking it my dog began to growl. It was then that I saw two forms coming toward me, and when they were within 5 feet of me they just stopped and looked at me, and I at them. For a good 10 or 15 seconds. Tiny, an obedient dog, had stopped growling by this time. On her master's command. They were about 4 feet high, dressed in pale green coveralls from head to foot, and they had helmets of the same color with a visor that was blacked out. Then the one on the right beckoned me with his right forearm and turned away. Still waving its arm, I took it that he wished me to follow, which I did. He moved off and I fell in behind him, and the chap that was on the left fell in behind me. We walked along the towpath until we got to the railings by the canal bridge. The form in front of me went through the railings, while I went over the top, and we crossed Government Road, then went down on the footpath. Going around a slight left-hand bend I saw a large object, about 40 to 45 feet across, standing on the towpath, with about 10 to 15 feet of it over the bank on the left of the path. And I thought, Christ, what the hell's that? Didn't think about UFOs at the time. When we got down there this form in front of me went up the steps and I followed. The steps were offline to the towpath and we had to step onto the grass to go up them. Portholes were set in the hull, and the object rested on two ski-type runners. Going in the door, the corners weren't sharp, they were rounded off. We went into this octagonal room. The form in front of me crossed over the room, and I heard a sound as if a sliding door was being opened and closed. I stood in the room to the right of the door, and the form that had walked behind me stood just inside. Between me and the door. I don't know whether it was to stop me going out or not. I stood there a good 10 minutes, taking in everything I could see. The walls, the floor, and the ceiling were all black, and looked to me like unfinished metal, whereas the outside looked like burnished aluminum. I did not see any sign of nuts or bolts, nor did I see any seams where the object had been put together. What did interest me most of all was a shaft that rose up from the floor to the ceiling. The shaft was about 4 feet in circumference, and on the right-hand side of it was a Z-shaped handle. On either side of that stood two forms, similar to those that walked along the towpath with me. All of a sudden a voice said to me, "Come and stand under the amber light." I could not see any amber light until I took a step to my right, and there it was way up on the wall just under the ceiling. I stood there for about 5 minutes. Then a voice said, "What is your age?" I said, "I shall be 78 next birthday." And after a while I was asked to turn around, which I did, facing the wall. After about 5 minutes he said to me, "You can go. You are too old and infirm for our purpose." I left the object, and while walking down the steps I used the handrail and found it had 2 joints in it. So I came to the conclusion it was telescopic. I walked along the towpath to about halfway between the object and the canal bridge, stopped, and looked back and noticed that the dome of the object looked very much like an oversized chimney cowl and that it was revolving anti-clockwise. I then walked on to the spot where I had left my dog and fishing tackle. And the first thing I did when I got there was to pick up my cold cup of tea and drink it. And then I heard this whining noise, just as if an electric generator was starting up. And this thing lifted off and the bright light came on again. It was so bright that I could see my fishing float in the water 6 feet away from the opposite bank of the canal, and the thin iron bars on the canal bridge. The object took off at a very high speed, out over the military cemetery in the west. And then a little later I saw the light going over the hog's back and out of sight. This was around 2:00.